there, and welcome. If you're a parent, you know that you watch every single little milestone. And those first wobbly steps, they're a huge deal. But sometimes the way our kids walk can bring up a lot of questions. So today, we're going to break down the most common walking patterns in kids to figure out what's totally normal, what's just a phase, and when it might be time for a quick checkup.
So, be honest. Have you ever caught yourself staring at your little one toddling around and just wondering, wait, is that right? Is that normal? Maybe their feet turn in a little, or they seem to be constantly up on their tiptoes. Trust me, you are so not alone in this. It's one of the biggest concerns for parents, so let's get some clarity on it together.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the direction of their feet. We're going to look at two things that are basically opposites. Intoeing, which you've probably heard called pigeon-toed, and out-toeing. And even though they look totally different, they're often just a temporary, normal part of your child's journey to walking like a pro. Now this is pretty fascinating. The reason for intoeing actually changes as your kid gets older. When they're an infant, it's usually just a slight curve in their foot, from being all curled up in the womb. Then, as a toddler, it's more likely a tiny twist in the shin bone, and by the time they're a preschooler, it's often coming from the thigh bone. But here's the really crucial part. The body is amazing at fixing itself, and most kids will naturally straighten out their walk by the time they're about 8 years old. So, what's the difference between being pigeon-toed and duck-footed? This slide lays it out perfectly. Intoeing, or pointing in, usually shows up earlier, and most of the time it fixes itself. Out-toeing, pointing out, tends to pop up a bit later, maybe around age 4 to 7. And while a mild case is often fine, it doesn't always self-correct quite as reliably. The things to watch for are different too. With intoeing, we're on the lookout for frequent tripping. With out-toeing, we're watching to see if it's getting worse or if it starts causing any knee pain. Okay, so this all boils down to a pretty simple checklist. When do you actually need to pick up the phone? Well, it's time to check in with the doctor if the pattern, either in or out, is still there past 8 or 10, or if it's way more noticeable on one side than the other. And of course, if your child is tripping over their own feet constantly, or if they start complaining about any pain in their legs or knees, that's your cue. All right, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about the direction the feet are pointing, but what about how the foot actually hits the ground? We're going to dive into two more super common things you might see: flat feet and toe walking.
Have you ever looked at your toddler's cute little feet and thought, wait a minute, where's the arch? Well, what you're seeing is almost certainly perfectly normal. I mean, look at this number. More than half of all 3-year-olds have what we call flexible flat feet. It's just because their arches haven't formed yet, and they've got that adorable, squishy baby fat pad for cushioning.
And just to show you how fast things change, by the time they hit age 6, that number drops by more than half. This really shows you that it's a natural process. As their little muscles get stronger and that baby fat starts to disappear, that arch just starts to pop up all on its own.
So here's the typical game plan for foot arches. From birth up to about age 5, flat feet are pretty much the standard. Then, right around 6 or 7, you'll start to see an arch taking shape. And by age 10, most kids have that stable, solid arch we're used to seeing. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay, and now for toe walking. Seeing your toddler bouncing around on the balls of their feet like a little ballerina can be a bit surprising, right? But here's the key thing to remember. For most kids, especially between 1 and 3, it's just a phase. They're just figuring out their balance and how to move, and it usually fades away as they get more confident on their feet. So when should you get these things checked out? Well, for flat feet, the big red flag is if the arch is rigid, like it doesn't even show up when they stand on their tiptoes, or if it's actually causing them pain. For toe walking, the main thing is age. If they're still doing it consistently after they turn 3, or if it's only happening on one foot, that's when it's time to chat with a doctor. All right, we need to shift our focus now, because we're going to talk about two patterns that are less about normal development and more about signals that something might need a closer look. These are the real red flags: limping and a wobbly, unstable hip walk. This is probably the most important point we're going to make today, so I want it to really sink in. While all those other things we've talked about can be normal phases, this slide says it all. A limp is never a normal part of learning to walk. Toddlers are wobbly, for sure. They're unsteady, but they shouldn't be consistently favoring one leg over the other. Now, what about that wobbly side-to-side walk? There's a technical name for it, but what you're basically seeing is that the hip drops on the side of the leg that's lifted off the ground. A little toddler waddle is totally normal as they're getting their sea legs, so to speak, but if you're still seeing this very specific hip drop after age 3 or 4, it could be a sign of some weakness in the hip muscles that needs to be checked out.
So how do you know when it's time to act on this stuff? This slide gives you a super simple 4-step mental checklist. First, just observe. Is the limp sticking around for more than a week? Second, ask, is there any pain, swelling, or a fever? Third, check. Does one leg look any different from the other? And finally, evaluate. Is that wobbly hip walk still happening after age 4? If the answer is yes to any of these, it's definitely time to make an appointment.
Whew, we have covered a lot of ground. So now let's pull everything together into one single, easy-to-use checklist that you can have as your go-to guide.
And here it is. This table pulls everything we just talked about into one simple chart. You can see each pattern, the normal age range for it, and the clear signs for when it's time to check in with a pro. Think of this as your quick reference cheat sheet. Is it happening in the normal age range? Are there any red flags, like pain? This chart helps you answer those questions in a single glance.
At the end of the day, what's the most important thing to take away from all this is that your child's body is pretty incredible, and most of these quirky little walking patterns are just temporary stops along the road to a strong, steady walk. Just trust your gut. You watch your child more than anybody, and now you've got the knowledge to be their best, most informed advocate.
So there you have it. You're now ready to understand those little steps in a completely new way. Instead of just worrying, you can watch with confidence, knowing exactly what to look for. So, what's the next big adventure on your radar? Is it jumping with 2 feet? Climbing to the top of the slide? Maybe even that first bike ride? Whatever it is, you've got this. Thanks for tuning in.